This is the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast, presented by Massage Envy, the first podcast devoted entirely to Arkansas baseball. Featuring insight from Arkansas baseball color analyst Bubba Carpenter. Here's Matt Jones.
Exciting week for Arkansas baseball. They're coming off a big series win over South Carolina. They go to Vanderbilt this weekend, and they could win an SEC championship in Nashville. Amazing how this season has gone for this team when you think about everything they've gone through, and then you look at what's happened elsewhere in the SEC to give them this opportunity at Vanderbilt. It's a good opportunity. Vanderbilt going to be without at least one, maybe two starting pitchers this week. We'll get into all of that on the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast. I'm Matt Jones with Bubba Carpenter. If Arkansas wins two games at Vanderbilt, they're going to at least share an SEC championship. And then you get into all kinds of different scenarios. They could win one, a team could get swept. They could win two, a team could lose one, could lose two. Lots of scenarios still with 3 games left to play. But basically, the SEC championship is going to come down between Arkansas, Florida, LSU, and Vanderbilt. And Bubba, it's Nate Allen wrote something at our website this week that I thought was a great point, that this day and age, there's so much focus that's put on a national championship, regardless of the sport, that sometimes I think that conference championships can get overlooked. But this is still a really big deal to win a conference championship, and especially so when you're playing in a conference that's as competitive as the SEC is in baseball.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. And, the thing is everyone's the program. I mean, it's kind of DVH has built it, and Norm DeBryan, to the point where it's Omaha or bust. If we don't get to Omaha, it's a bad season. Well, no, I mean, if you can win, the SEC, that's a great year. And you look at our record right now, we're 19-8. I think just winning 20 games in the SEC is incredible, with the competition and everything. So, I mean, to be where we're at right now, I think it's incredible. I think it's a testament to the program, to the resiliency of this team, and the coaching staff. It's just it's been amazing, the way things have kind of played out at the end of this season to put us in this position, and we control our own destiny. We just go into Vandy and take care of business, and everything lines out for us.
You mentioned the 20 wins in SEC play. Arkansas's only done that 3 other times. They did it in 1999, Norm DeBryan's first and only SEC championship, won a couple of Southwest Conference titles when you were a player. Dave Van Horn's 2019 team won 20 games. They won the West, did not win the conference. And then 2 years ago, they won 22 games and won the conference, won the tournament. It's rare. I mean, it's real rare, and it's rare to win a regular season conference championship at Arkansas. You don't have just a whole lot of opportunities because they didn't join a conference till the mid-'70s. You guys won 2 in the Southwest Conference. Mentioned Norm won 1 in the SEC, and Dave Van Horn's won 2 in the SEC. That's it. I mean, you get a chance here to be one of a half dozen teams that have won an SEC at Arkansas, or a conference at Arkansas.
And who would have thought it this year with everything? If you would have known going in that everything that happened was going to happen, I mean, if you're a betting man, you would have. There's no way you would have bet on this to happen, and that's the beauty of baseball. It really is. It's anything can happen. I mean, the numbers, the analytics, all that. At the end of the day, you can throw all that stuff out the window. When you step out on the field, the game of baseball has a heartbeat. The numbers don't always tell the story. It's the players on the field getting it done, and these guys have gotten it done. And I think it's been awesome.
Standings breakdown here in the SEC. Arkansas is 19-8 going into the weekend. That's a game ahead of Florida, who is 18-9. A game and a half ahead of LSU, who was 17-9, and 2 games ahead of Vanderbilt, who was 17-10. We talked about this for 6 weeks, that LSU South Carolina rainout was probably going to have an impact on how the standings looked at the end of the season, and lo and behold, there it is. If LSU wins this weekend at Georgia and Arkansas loses some games in Nashville, basically it comes down to win percentage. Because you got a division championship you're thinking about there too, even if you don't get the job done in the conference. There's just so many different scenarios that can play out this weekend. But basically, the ideal scenario for Arkansas is to win 2 games at Vanderbilt. You win the series. That's the goal every weekend. And hope that Florida loses 1 game at Kentucky. If you do that, you win the conference outright.
Well, and I love we're going in. I mean, you got to love Hagen on Friday night or Thursday night this week. Um, I mean, I just see it happening. I really like these guys. I like the way they play. Um, I think we're going to go in there and take 2 out of 3. I really do, especially with Vandy. They're kind of limping out of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
They're banged up a little bit. Who knows what Corbin's going to do if he's going to sit a guy out? Or maybe rush a guy back. It's I've read a couple of articles. One guy's 50-50. You don't really know what you're going to get exactly, but still, I don't think we need to worry about that. I think if we go in there and play Razorback baseball, we win 2 out of 3, and then we're in great shape.
Arkansas beat South Carolina last week twice. Didn't see that series going like it did you? I mean, those two teams come in, combined ERA of about 9. They're averaging 17 runs per game combined. And so conventional wisdom says this is going to be a high scoring series, 3 games, 15 runs. I didn't see it playing out like that.
No, I didn't. Well, yeah, I think you originally told me the stat. They'd only given up. There was one game all year they'd been held to 1 run, and
Mm.
we held them to 1 run 2 different games, and then they
Mm-hmm.
scored 3 the other. I mean, it's uh it's a testament to our pitching staff, to our scouting. I thought we just carved up their hitters all week. There's a thing when I talk about it a lot on the broadcast about being caught in between as a hitter. I think our pitching staff had their hitters just baffled from start to finish. I think they used the whole plate, they changed speeds. Um, they kind of got away from their scouting report, some of their tendencies. I don't know. I just think they did a great job, and you could see the South Carolina hitters going back to the dugout, just shaking their head. There was a lot of soft contact. There weren't a lot of hard hit balls. I thought it was just a masterful job by the pitching staff getting it done against South Carolina.
Just 5 pitchers that Arkansas threw in that series. I don't think it could have played out any better from a bullpen perspective because I guess that's the concern going into these weekends. Sometimes you feel pretty good about Friday, you feel pretty good about Saturday, but you get into Sunday. We've seen some games this year, whether it be Georgia or whether it be the Texas A&M series, where it's gotten a little dicey on day 3. But it just sure feels like this pitching staff and especially what I would call the top line pitchers. There's probably 5 or 6 of those guys. It seems like they've really solidified and become a strong staff. And you talk about not seeing the season play out like it has. I mean, who would have thought that Arkansas would have the best ERA in the SEC, at least in SEC only games? And that's the case. After that performance against South Carolina last week, their ERA in SEC only games is down to 4.6. And you look at what's happening at Vanderbilt, and you look what's happening at LSU. Those ERAs are skyrocketing while Arkansas is coming down. That feels like it's a good sign with the postseason on the horizon.
No, I think so. And I wonder if more teams are going to start taking on. I'm starting to see a lot more TBAs in games around the conference, kind of like a DVH approach where it's just 27 outs at a time. Now, part of it is the fact that there have been injuries to other pitching staffs also, but I think as a baseball player, Matt, I mean, you want to know what your role is. You want to know when you show up to the ballpark, this is my role tonight. This is it. And I think it's really helped this pitching staff. Guys kind of settling into these roles. You got Hagen Smith starting and Gage Woods. He knows that Friday night when that situation comes up, I'm on the bump. And then you roll into Saturday. Brady Tiger, Will McIntyre is going to follow him. And then Sunday you got Hunter Holland going as long as he can. And then, from there you just kind of piece it together. And Cody Adcock didn't throw all weekend. I still say Cody's got some of the best stuff on the staff, and we didn't use him all weekend. I don't know, man. It was impressive weekend to get through the whole weekend like we did. And only using 5 pitchers was amazing. Now, the only downfall to that is you got a lot of guys that didn't throw, but the upside to that is now these guys are fresh. And then when we go into Vandy, we're fresh, or when we get into SEC tournaments, some of these guys can get some innings in. Hopefully, if we're in a situation where we can just go in there, let some guys get some innings in, and then come home.
Hunter Holland with a big time performance in game 3 of that South Carolina series, 10 strikeouts, complete game. He's won conference pitcher of the week, national pitcher of the week. Just an outstanding outing from him. And then especially, when you talk to him, Bubba, about everything he's going through. I talked to him after the game on Sunday, and really finally got some detail on what's going on with this left leg of his. And it's been described to us as shin splint type system or symptoms. But what he said is really happening is that he's got a nerve that's just not reacting at the bottom of his kneecap. And so basically, he said his leg goes numb from his kneecap down to about his ankle. And he said he can't really feel that push off leg. And he said they're doing lots of things, lots of fluid injections, trying to get that nerve working properly again. And it is having some response to that treatment. But basically, he's just kind of grinning and bearing it. And he did an outstanding job the other day, and just that was probably the best pitching performance I think I've seen all year. When you think about the situation, the opponent, what he's gone through the 3 or 4 previous weeks to that, just outstanding job by Hunter.
Yeah, I think so. And it's tough. I mean, if you're not able to use your as a left-handed pitcher, if you're not able to use that left leg that you push off with, you worry about extra strain on the arm. But, Hunter told me, he's like, look, he said, I'm just trying to glide down the mound, just nice and smooth. Um, not worried so much about the velo on his fastball. All he's doing is relying on other pitches. Now he's going more to his cutter, more to his slider, mixing in some changeups. He's got the two-seam fastball. I mean, he still has all the weapons. He's lost a few miles an hour, but man, all his other pitches are still working. But more importantly, he's throwing strikes. I mean, he worked ahead of South Carolina hitters all weekend, and he just had them up there guessing, and they were constantly caught in between, late on the fastball, early on the off speed. They were just never on a pitch. I want to say it was Tippett that hit a home run on a curveball.
Mm-hmm.
That ball just ran into his bat. It was a curveball breaking down and in. His barrel just happened to stay on the tracks and catch it out front and went over the fence. But other than that, I mean, he was just it was an awesome performance.
You remember I told you earlier this year, I thought we were going to get one of those performances out of Hunter at some point this year. It just took longer than I thought it would. I think I said, wouldn't surprise me to see him go 7, 8 innings with 12 strikeouts. You get 9 innings, 10 strikeouts, just uh, big time performance. And it's the first 9 inning complete game that Arkansas's had in the SEC since 2016. Dominic Taccolini did it against Kentucky. And now you've got Holland and McIntyre both have thrown complete games. Will did it in a non-conference against Louisiana Tech. It's the first time that they've had 2 complete games in the same season since 2015, 2 9 inning complete games since 2015. Keaton McKinney did it twice that year against Alabama and Kentucky. So, Dave Van Horn said after the game, he said those are hard and they're rare, and you don't see them very often. And I guess the stats kind of back that up.
Well, look at SEC lineups, especially today with the transfer portal. Look, these are all veteran lineups. They're big, strong veteran hitters that are smart. They've got an idea of their swing. They've got good approaches, and so yeah, for a guy to go out there and to go 9 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, that's you don't see it very often in today's SEC baseball or even in college baseball all the way around. And then especially with the ball. Being in my mind, the ball's still a little bit hotter than it's been in the past. Some people disagree with me, but I think exit velos don't lie. It's just rare and just a great performance by Hunter Holland. And hey, so answer me this, Matt. So going into let's say we go into Vandy and we win the first 2 games. If you're DVH, do you sit Hunter Holland out on Sunday? I know it's hypotheticals, so it's kind of hard to get ahead of ourselves. We still got to take care of business. But if you're DVH, do you rest Hunter?
Well, it probably depends on what's Florida done at that point. Do you have a chance to go for the overall title outright, or is it going to be a split deal? That's a good question. I don't know. I would
Florida.
I think you go ahead and you might not throw him a long outing, but you go out there and maybe you let him at least knock off the rust, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let him at least throw a few pitches, stay in a routine. But Florida's going to have their hands full at Kentucky. I don't think Kentucky on the road's not a very good team, but at home they're a good team at home. So I don't see I see Kentucky winning one of those, at least maybe 2 of those games. They might win this series against Florida.
Now, I want to get into that a little bit later here because, Kentucky, that's a turf field. Vanderbilt's a turf field. I want to get your opinion here in a little bit on how turf affects these teams that come in from a grass field, because I think there is a little bit of a home field advantage for those teams that play on turf. Going back to pitching, Hagen Smith throws 5 and 2/3 innings on Friday. Gage Wood 3 1/3 inning save. Or it really wasn't a save. He got the win because they didn't take the lead until he'd come in the game. But it's 3 1/3 innings. He pitches the final 3 1/3. Brady Taggart looked great for 3 innings on Saturday. And then Will McIntyre, outside of the little hiccup that he had at the start of that outing when he came in, yeah, he gave him 6 great innings. And I thought going into Sunday that McIntyre might be the MVP of the series, even though he had taken the loss, because he had saved the bullpen for Sunday. And then lo and behold, they didn't need any of them. Just again, just great pitching all around. I wonder what you thought about each of those pitchers, though, individually.
Well, I think they were great. I think Hagen did a great job and went 5 and 2/3. Kept his pitch count down early in the game. Gage was great. I mean, Gage really has stepped up, and he's everything we had hoped he would be. I mean, I've watched Gage pitch for a long time. I know what he's capable of. The guys, he can get it done out there. Brady was great. Breaking ball looked good. He spotted his fastball both sides of the plate. 93 to 95. Will, when Will came in, he hit the first batter. Gave up a bloop single. Another ground ball.
Pretty weak contact on all those hits.
Yeah, it really was weak, except for Wimmer. I think Wimmer was the one that hit a line drive up the middle on an 0-2 slider. It was like 101 off the bat, 103, something like that. I mean, that was a bad pitch. It was a slider over the middle of the plate, stayed flat, had no depth on it. I mean, I'm sure Will knew it as soon as he let go of it. But other than that, it was just weak contact. And then after that, he settled in. I think he started going more to his fastball. I was talking to Phil about it on the air, and I think they were sitting off speed. I think they looked at the scouting report and they said Will's going to throw a lot of off-speed stuff. Let's look off-speed, take the fastball, because when he was throwing a fastball, he would lock them up. They weren't swinging at it; they were swinging at the slider cutter. And I think he made a good adjustment after that inning, after that fourth inning, and came in and started throwing a few more fastballs. Kind of got them sideways, the South Carolina hitters, and once again got them caught in between. They didn't know what to do. I look at it kind of like when Connor Nolan when Florida came in last year, Connor Nolan, Florida batters were in the front of the batter's box and they were looking for that slider, and Connor's just throwing fastballs by them, because you can tell they were looking off speed. And I think Will kind of made the same adjustment against South Carolina.
But McIntyre and Tigert and the South Carolina pitchers the last couple of days in Holland, they all threw it to a little bit more generous strike zone than there was Friday night.
Yeah, it was a big zone, but it was consistent. So, but yeah, it had a tendency to get a little bit wide.
Tigert throws 37 pitches in 3 innings. I think the temptation was I don't know if the temptation was to leave him out there longer. I think that the wish is that they could leave him out there longer, but they don't want to mess with his arm, in this recovery that he's in. Dave Van Horn said after the game that he thought he could go maybe 50 pitches at Vanderbilt. I heard Van Horn on Sirius XM this week with Mike Farron and Mike Rooney said maybe 60 pitches against Vanderbilt for Brady Tigert. And, the whole goal is to build him up to where maybe he can go a 90, 100 pitch start during the postseason. They see him as a starter. I don't think you're going to see Brady Tigert back in the bullpen at any point this year. I think he may have locked down their number 2 starter role. Maybe he's their number 1 starter, depending on what they want to do with Hagen Smith and how his starts go over the next couple of weeks. But, I think that what we're seeing right now is just kind of a slow build up, add 10, 15, maybe 20 pitches to the pitch count every week to where you've got a guy that can go maybe 7 innings when the postseason comes around. And the stuff's been good enough, I think, with Tigert that it wouldn't surprise if he was able to go a long outing like that. Since he came back from the injury, he has not given up a run in 6 innings.
Well, I like the way he pitches in his starting role. He's able to use, when you come out of the bullpen, you're going with your 2 best pitches typically, and for Brady, it was fastball, breaking ball. He's got that high spin breaking ball, and he would tunnel the fastball off of it. come in just throwing everything, just power stuff. Now that he's starting, you can see him mix in a two-seam fastball, change ups, pitch fastballs to both sides of the plate, throw a slider, throw a curveball. I mean, he's got all the weapons of a really good starter, and now he's able to use them all.
Mm.
And we still haven't seen his best stuff. I don't think. I think he's going to continue to get better, but he's got all the weapons for a starter, and I love seeing him in that role. As much as I love seeing him come out of the bullpen and just dominate hitters, I love watching him come out as a starter and actually pitch, and it's good to see.
Van Horn was mentioned on that Sirius XM interview that I was talking about how, and we've talked about this a little bit with Hagan too, the difference in mentality when you're coming out of the bullpen versus when you're starting. And, he thought that Tigert may have worn himself out by the end of last year with just all the emotion and, that anger that he pitched with late in games. And uh, that maybe that's not going to be the case this year because he is having to harness that a little bit as a starter.
Yeah, that could be part of it. I know he talked about, you know, um, at Mississippi State where Hagen Smith came out like I think DVH called him a caged lion
That's
in the
right.
first inning. Just and you do have to have a little bit different. I mean, you're still pitching angry, but you control the anger, I guess you can say. And yeah, I think he might be right with Brady because yeah, when he came out last year, he was a beast on the mound in closing out those games. So, I don't know if a lot of guys just have one speed though, and they can't control that. When they take off that edge or that anger, then their stuff's not quite as good. They've kind of got to pitch with that edge. So you got to find that happy medium.
After Arkansas beat South Carolina in game one, Kendall Diggs said, "Did you notice we had a little bit of an extra pep in our step?" And it was because he had Tavian Josenberger back. I thought he played pretty well. It didn't look like there was any rust with him. I mean, it was left side going to 3-2 counts, drawing his walks. I think he might have stolen a base, ran down some balls in center field that you wondered if he was going to get to with a bad hamstring. But he looks like he's 100% and, right back where maybe he was 3 weeks ago in that leadoff role. And that's a good sign for Arkansas having Tavian Josenberger not only back but playing like he did before the injury.
Yeah, I think so. I think over the weekend he was 1 for 7 with 4 walks, a sack bunt. When I knew he was back, Matt, is when Kendall Diggs hit the right field, and Tavian went first to third. I
Mm.
watched him run around the bases. He was flying around the bases. That's when I knew, hey, he's 100%. Then he laid a bunt down, almost beat it out, and then just tracking balls in center field. Borfin did a good job. Jace did a good job filling in for him out there, but there's only one Tavian Josenberger. I love how when a ball is hit, he runs to a spot. Like I tell my outfielders, look, beat the ball to that spot. Don't track along with the ball, beat it to the spot. And it's fun watching Tavian out there. That ball that he didn't really rob it, but the ball he caught in right center where he kind of jumped up and it was almost a robbed home run. He made that look so easy. And it's effortless for him. It's just a natural position for him, and it's good to have him back out there in center field and at the top of the lineup. And I agree. I think it was a big emotional boost for the lineup just having him back up there.
I'm going to reference a Sirius XM interview one more time. I don't want to give away everything that they said in it, but I did think it was interesting. Mike Rooney asked Van Horn, with everything that's happened, has there been a player that has kept everything together? And he mentioned two. He said, I think that Hagen Smith leads by example on the field. But he said in the clubhouse, he said, and I don't go in there very often because I tell the players that's their place. But he said, I think Tavian Josenberger runs the clubhouse. And he talked about how the players have gravitated toward Josenberger, basically from the moment that he stepped on campus. And when you think about, he wasn't just a real heralded player. He was a second baseman at KU. They asked him to move to center field at Arkansas. It's kind of interesting to me how this guy who doesn't have a whole lot of accolades has become the team leader like Josenberger has, and a guy that wasn't here last year. I don't know. I think it says a lot about his character that he is that guy that all the players gravitate toward, and that it does seem like he's the leader of the team.
Well, I think some guys just have that I call it that it factor,
Mm-hmm.
and Tavian has it. I mean, he really does. There's just something about him when you talk to him. Um, just the way he carries himself on the field. He plays with some emotion, some energy. But when you're talking to him about baseball, I love the way he talks about the game. He just has that leadership ability, and I call it just that it factor. And it's hard to put your finger what is exactly the it factor. Well, some guys just have it,
Hmm.
and Tavian does. It's something that we're a different team, I think, when he's on the field.
I had a chance to talk to his dad. Met him for the first time a couple 3 weeks ago, and talked to him a little bit. And you can feel that with his dad too. And I didn't realize this. His dad runs a baseball facility up in the Kansas City area, so this is a baseball guy, and I think that helps. And from a leadership perspective, with one other thing before we get to our first break, Peyton Holt. I mean, talk about a spark plug. It's 6 for 10, I think, during the series against South Carolina. Played good second base. Was part of, I think, two different double plays, at least one, maybe both of them. I think he was part of both double plays on Friday night. But wow, I mean, it just seems like he's added such energy at the bottom of the order, and that's where Arkansas really did its damage against South Carolina, at least in that first game. And you talk about Kendall Diggs and all the RBIs that he had. Well, it's because 7, 8, 9 are getting on. Even John Bolton is getting on at over a 300 clip, or he's hitting over 300 in the last three SEC series. His on base percentage during that time is 516. And so you're seeing, kind of a transformation, it feels like, in those 7, 8, 9 hitters. And I think it starts with the play of Peyton Holt and just the energy that he brings. And you know what he reminds me of a little bit, Bubba, watching him run the bases is you ever watch the rodeo, you watch the barrel racers and how those girls' cowboy hats kind of fly back whenever
Yeah.
they're they're rounding the barrels. I mean, that's him, but he's going. You see him a couple of times this weekend. That helmet was being held on by his ears, I think. He had to be. I have to imagine that hurt pretty bad running into second. But we've talked about that before. I think it shows just the force that he runs with. The helmet never stays on, and I think that is indicative of a player who really plays hard.
Oh yeah. I mean, so when I look at Peyton Holt, I just think he's just a baseball player. He's that kind of that I call him like a dirtbag baseball player that's always the dirtiest guy on the field. He's diving for balls, he's running around the bases. He's always in the middle of the action. He's a high energy guy. I like watching him play. I love talking baseball with him. And the thing that's impressive, if you think back, Matt, so early in the year, he kind of Caleb Cali was struggling a little bit. Peyton Holt got a chance to play and pretty much won the third base job, and then strains his hamstring.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Caleb Cali gets hot, and then Peyton's back on the bench again. Well, he didn't let that affect him. It would have been really easy for him to get a bad attitude about that. All he did was just keep a great attitude, keep working, take his ground balls, take his BP, get his extra work in, and stay ready. Then when Peyton Stovall goes down, he gets a chance to play, and he's taking advantage of it. And I think that bottom of the lineup, he's the leader of the bottom of that lineup. And that's one reason, if you look at Kendall Diggs' number, he's leading the team in RBIs. He spent a few weeks in the leadoff spot. He wouldn't be leading the team in RBIs if it wasn't for those guys at the bottom of the lineup. You got Peyton Holt, Parker Rowland, John Bolton getting on base for him. That's the reason he's leading in RBIs. And I think for this team to go as far as we want to go this year, I think it's real important that the bottom of that lineup stays hot. And look, they don't have to be 3 for 4 every game. I don't care what their batting averages are. They're having good at bats. They're finding ways to get on base. When they don't get on base, they move a runner. They have quality outs, and that's key right there. Just getting that production out of the bottom of your lineup.
And it was even Diggs didn't. I don't think he got a hit the last two games of the series, but the big hits came from the bottom of the order. Parker Rowland had a big 2-run hit. John Bolton had a double, I think, that scored a run in one of those last two games. I think it was the final game. So yeah, I mean, it's the bottom of the order is getting the job done, and that has been, again, like I said about a couple of other different things. That's just a positive sign, I think, for this team going into the postseason.
Well, if you look at our offensive numbers, I mean, we know what the pitching staff's done lately. They're number one in ERA. They've given up the fewest runs in SEC play. if you look offensively, we're 12th in batting average, which the batting average doesn't tell the story. We're hitting 256 as a team. We're 9th in runs scored, 7th in walks, 2nd in sack bunts, 2nd in sack flies. So those last few numbers tell me that we're finding ways to manufacture runs and get runs across the board. Everyone gets caught up in the batting average. Well, we're hitting 12th. Well, who cares? We're finding ways to win games. We're getting enough runs across the plate to win games. That's all that matters.
What do you like better? You like batting average or OPS?
OPS, I think. I really do. I don't know. I'm not a big, you got to remember, I develop kids, and my job is to train kids, and I talk to the parents all the time about the batting average. Look, y'all get too caught up in the batting average. Let's don't look. There's a lot of other things to look at to tell if your kid's getting better. And so, yeah, OPS.
Yeah, well, I mean,
what about you?
I used to be batting average until about 4 or 5 years ago, but the more I've kind of looked into OPS and started to kind of understand what a good OPS number is, and a 900 OPS is about the equivalent of a 300 batting average, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
somewhere in there, give or take.
And then you look at weighted on base percentage. There's so many other things that you can get into to really crunch the numbers and find out who's getting it done and who's not.
I like OPS. I think that I like the ability to put value on the on-base percentage.
Yes.
John Bolton's a perfect example. Mentioned this over the last 9 games. He's batting 300 something, which is great. It's way higher than he's batted the rest of the season. But you look at the on-base percentage, 516, and he's hitting in the 9 hole. So, like you said, he's setting the table for Kendall Diggs and Jace Borfin and those other top of the order hitters. And I think that's a huge key to why they've gone 8-1 over these last 3 weeks has been, not only his play defensively, but what he's been able to do with the plate. So I'm a big fan of OPS. I don't know that I really liked it the first time that I heard, or the first time that I really started to see it become kind of common lingo within baseball. But I think the longer that I have been really aware of what it is, and I think I like it more. It just, and OPS, for people who don't know, I figure most people do, but it's on base percentage plus slugging. So basically, you just take your on base percentage, you add your slugging to it. Like we said, a 900 OPS is a pretty good OPS. I think anything over 1,000 is really good. Wouldn't you say, Bubba?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want my young hitters. I talk all the time about winning pitches, controlling at bats, all those things. But at the end of the day, find a way to get on base.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. If you go up and you have what I call a pure at bat, your odds of getting on base skyrocket. And that's the key. And you're going to get a pitch to hit. It might be the first pitch, it might be the last pitch, but you are going to get a pitch to hit. Be ready for that pitch and put the barrel on it when you get it.
Well, and then it's like the old saying, good things happen when you put the ball in play, right?
Yes.
You may not get anything, your batting average may not go up, your OPS may not go up because you got on base because of an error, but still you're on base. And I just feel like we've seen that so many times that you put the ball in play and you really put the pressure on the defenders to make that play. And we've seen Arkansas be, the beneficiary of that quite a bit this year. A lot more Razorback baseball to get to. We want to tell you that the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast is sponsored by Massage Envy, voted the best day spa and best massage in all of Northwest Arkansas. You can visit Mike and his staff in Tuscany Square at 2603 West Pleasant Grove Road in Rogers, or in Fayetteville at 3557 North Shiloh Drive. Massage Envy has services for everyone. MassageEnvy.com.
Massage Envy, with clinics in Rogers and Fayetteville, has been awarded Northwest Arkansas's Best Day Spa and Best Massage. One of the reasons is our care for athletes, both serious and recreational. We now offer rapid tension relief sessions using a high-caliber vibrating tool and total body stretch sessions like the ones used by the PGA. Both of these new services can be combined with the always popular deep muscle treatment. So whether you compete or just want to relax, there is no place better than Massage Envy.
WholeHogSports.com has the largest, most experienced staff of reporters covering sports in Arkansas. Football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. You'll find it at WholeHogSports.com. The website includes up-to-minute news, daily commentaries, and award-winning photography from the staffs of Hogs Illustrated and the Democrat Gazette. For subscriptions, call 1-800-757-6277. That's 1-800-757-6277. Or visit us online today, WholeHogSports.com.
With almost 30 years in business, the Teague Law Firm can help with most family law and criminal law issues. Call James and the Teague Law Firm at 479-531-2785.
Okay, Bubba, I told you last week what happens when Arkansas sweeps a team. They come back and they win the next series, right? And I think everybody said there's no way that Mississippi State can beat LSU. Exhibit A, Mississippi State beats LSU. Crazy series. And, I don't know how you can trust LSU in the postseason right now with this bullpen that they have. This is 5 of 6 weeks where Paul Skeens has gone out and done what Paul Skeens does. Great outing on Friday night. They run roll Mississippi State, 12-1 final score. And Ty Floyd, even day 2, has a pretty good start. And then you get past him, and that bullpen is an absolute mess right now at LSU. They're giving up over 20 runs every weekend. And that's where I was going with the 5 of 6. They've given up 20 plus runs in 5 of their last 6 series. And against LSU, it happens again. They give up some late runs. Mississippi State wins 9-4 in a game that LSU was winning in game 2. And then in game 3, LSU's up 13-4. Mississippi State comes back and ties it, sends it to extras, gets ahead in the 10th and wins 14-13. How can you trust LSU with this bullpen right now?
Well, you can't. I went back and looked at the box scores to see who all gave up the runs, and everyone did. They used 9 pitchers in that Sunday game. We were following it during the game. We thought, oh, here's the run rule. I think it was 13-4 after 5. We're like, okay, they're going to get run ruled here, and the next thing you know, Mississippi State car starts coming back. But you said it last week, and I kind of said, no, you're crazy, Matt. I didn't think Mississippi State had a chance. I thought LSU was going to go in there and sweep. And I said, we need to really take care of business here at home because LSU is going to sweep Mississippi State. I didn't think I don't know. At LSU, I would have never guessed that. I'm not a betting man, but if I was going to put money on something, I would have definitely never put any money on Mississippi State to take 2 out of 3. I didn't think they'd win a single game, much less win the series.
I think it speaks to some real problems with LSU. I really do. They're going to be a national seed, and they're a national seed because of the body of work. Up until a week and a half ago, it was the best body of work in college baseball. Wake Forest is better now. I would say Arkansas is better right now than LSU is. But LSU, they're still going to be a top 8 seed. But you would have a hard time convincing me that with that bullpen that they're one of the 8 best teams in the game right now. I just don't think they are. I just don't think you can trust LSU to close out games. And if they're in a home regional and they have that type of performance in game 2, let's say Ty Floyd doesn't have a good start and you have to depend on your bullpen for 5-6 innings, I don't know if I feel very good about them, especially if they get a tough 2 seed as a draw there in Baton Rouge.
Right. Well, I said it early in the year on one of these podcasts. I said, the thing about LSU, they brought in all these guys. They brought in all these prima donnas. They crammed them into a roster. And I predicted that they were going to self-destruct early in the year. We can go back and find it somewhere.
Oh, no, I remember.
But I just felt like you throw that many guys together. It's different than what DVH and our staff does. We did bring a bunch of guys in this year, and it's amazing how quick DVH taught them Razorback baseball. How to play the game. You told a story once of Caleb Cowley.
First at bat of the preseason.
Yeah, not hustling down the line. He's like, and he yelled at him, and then now you watch Caleb Cowley hustles down the line. Just little things like that. You don't see that out of LSU. There are a bunch of really good players thrown together. Believe me, I spent 7 years in AAA in the Yankee organization, surrounded by really good, high-paid free agent guys that they brought in. And just because on paper they all look really good, we didn't always play good as a team. the teams that I won with were the teams that were more homegrown, developed, knew how to play Yankee baseball and play the game the right way, hustle, and did all those little things. I just don't see LSU doing that. I see them as being really talented. I don't know. I just always in the back of my mind, I always felt like they're really close. They're one bad series away from self-destructing and starting to point fingers and it's your
Mm-hmm.
fault and it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
Now, could be totally wrong. They might get back on track and win it all. Who knows? The talent's there. I just don't know if the mentality is.
It reminds it's the reverse. And I remember the story that Dave Van Horn told me 10 years ago. You remember the 2013 team was the number one team going into the preseason. And that was the team they had great pitching, Ryan Stanek, Barrett Aston, Brandon Moore. You go on down the line. There were some really good pitchers on that staff. I think that was the staff that had the lowest ERA in college baseball in like 40 years. But they don't win a lot of games in the season. They lose a lot of low scoring, 1-run, 2-run games. They have to go to Kansas State and they lose in the regional. And, I talked to Van Horn the next fall about, well, what happened with that team? And, basically he told me, he said, so much of baseball is about how a team feels about each other. The most talented team doesn't always win. If that's the case, the New York Yankees are the World Series champions every year. And, that's obviously not the case. But, and so I think we're seeing that a little bit with LSU, but the reverse where, with that 2013 team is that, probably there were a little bit of friction about, hey, the lineup's not getting it done and the pitching staff's doing great. Well, at LSU right now, it's a little bit of, hey, the hitters they're averaging over 10 runs a game, and yet they still can't win because their bullpen's giving up 14 on Sunday, 9 on Saturday. It's just, it's not a good situation, I feel like, with LSU.
Yeah, I agree, and it can easily cause a little rift for there between the hitters, the pitchers, a little divide in the team, and then that's when things start to fall off the tracks and things kind of fall apart for you because we know how mental the game is. So we'll see what happens, but it'll be interesting to see. They go to Georgia this weekend. And it's not getting much easier for them.
And you've got Georgia. Georgia, they got swept at Missouri, but they've been very good at home. They've won series over Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee. They're in Athens. Their backs are against the wall when it comes to trying to get into the NCAA tournament. And so, yeah, I certainly don't expect LSU to sweep that series. I guess I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. But given the way their bullpen's going, I don't see it happening. And so I don't feel like LSU is the threat to Arkansas right now. If you were going to ask me going into this weekend, I would say I feel pretty good about Arkansas's chances to win the division at minimum. And then it feels like in the conference race, it's Florida. Florida swept Vanderbilt last week. Vanderbilt went into the weekend with the best record in the SEC, tied with Arkansas. They get swept. They got run rolled 10-0 in game 1. They lost by, I believe, 4 runs in games 2 and game 3. And Tim Corbin, I was talking about Florida on a Nashville radio show that I was listening to yesterday. He said that looks like a national championship team. And I thought that all year with Florida. We talked last week about what team would you not want to go into their regional. And I said in Gainesville, I wouldn't want to go in there with the way they hit home runs and that three-headed pitching staff that they have with Sproat and Waldrop and Caglione. And I mean, they made Vanderbilt look kind of junior high last week.
Yeah. 10-0, 6-2, 6-2. I mean, they just dominated them all weekend. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I haven't done as much research on Florida because they're not on our schedule this year. But I have watched them. I've looked at some of their numbers, and they're the real deal. But what's crazy to me, we always talk about how hard it is to sweep an SEC series, and I don't think there's ever been this many sweeps in SEC. And we can probably crunch the numbers next week after the last series is over and kind of figure out exactly how many sweeps. But I don't think there's ever been this many sweeps in SEC.
Yeah, Corbin kind of alluded to yesterday that he can't remember this much volatility in the SEC, where one team looks great one week and then they don't look great the next. And it's been kind of wild, to be honest with you. Ole Miss has been eliminated from the SEC tournament. That means that they are not going to make the NCAA postseason. Obviously, they've got a losing record. And I believe, Bubba, that they are the 6th team since the NCAA tournament expanded in 99 to win the national championship one year and to miss the NCAA tournament altogether the next. Mississippi State happened to them last year. So those are the two times that are most fresh. But I believe the other times, Oregon State in '08 after they had won back-to-back national championships, Arizona after they won it in 2012, UCLA after they won it in 2013, and then Coastal Carolina when they beat Arizona for the championship in 2016. Those were the other teams that didn't make the tournament. Uh, how do you explain what's happening at Ole Miss this year? I know they've had injuries, but a lot of teams have had injuries.
You know, I can't tell you, Matt. Other than they don't play baseball the way we play it. I mean, it's a different brand of baseball. It's more of a look at me style of baseball instead of look at the team. It's all about what am I doing as a player? In my opinion, that's the way LSU plays, or Ole Miss plays. Now, you got to remember, we talk about leadership and Tavian Josenberger, how important he is to this lineup. You look at Tim Elko. Last year they were scuffling. I think if they don't have Tim Elko last year, they don't get going because they were struggling. I think him being a team leader, he kept things together. He was kind of the enforcer on the team, and I think once Tim Elko was gone, I don't know, man. They're a different team. They don't play with passion. They and look, it's no secret. I don't like LSU. I don't like all the extra crap they do. I don't like the way they play baseball. But I was impressed with how they got things going last year, and they made the run that they did. But it's hard to believe you can go from that good to that bad in 1 year. But then you also look at Mississippi State. I mean, they won it 2 years ago, and right now they're the way they played against us 2 weeks ago that was embarrassing. That was bad baseball. I mean, everything about it was just bad baseball, bad pitching, bad base running, bad defense. I mean, it was just bad.
It's amazing that you've got your last two national championship coaches who all of a sudden there's talk about is their job safe. I think Bianco's probably safe because of, he's got a lot of goodwill built up at Ole Miss and, of course, just won the national championship last season. Lamonis would be the one that I would be a little bit more on shaky ground, I think, given that he hadn't been there as long. The 2 years since the championship haven't been good. The AD who hired him, John Cohen, isn't there anymore. He's at Auburn now. So we'll see what happens with Mississippi State. But if there was if there was any type of performance that could save your job, I would think it would be going to the top place team in the SEC and winning 2 of 3 after looking horrible the previous 2 or 3 weeks. So maybe Lamonis does get to come back next year at Mississippi State. We'll see. And speaking of coming back next year, how about the job that Jason Jackson is doing in Alabama? Since Brad Bohannon was fired, Alabama now has won 2 consecutive series. They beat Vanderbilt that weekend that Bohannon was fired. Then they went to Texas A&M and won last week. All of a sudden, that moves A&M back toward the NCAA tournament bubble. And Alabama, I don't think they're going to get to host, Bubba, but you look at their RPI, it's 11 right now. Their record is 35-17. Strength of schedule, not real good. It's 117 in non-conference. Overall strength of schedule is a little bit better. It's 13, a lot better actually, because they play in the SEC. But I feel like if Alabama can finish strong, maybe Jason Jackson gets to keep that job in Tuscaloosa next year for the way that he's been able to hold things together. When I think the expectation was Alabama, the wheels were going to fall off after everything that happened a couple of weeks ago.
Well, they've kind of rallied around that. But I said early in the year when we played Alabama, I thought they were a good team. I thought they were a really good team. And, they've proved it now. They've come on and they're playing like I thought they were capable of doing. But did you not think early on that they were a good team when we played them?
I did. Yeah. But here's the thing about Alabama that bugged me early in the year. I thought they were a good team and they kept losing 2 out of 3 every weekend. So they lose 2 out of 3 to Florida. They lost 2 out of 3 to Arkansas. They lost 2 out of 3 to, I think they lost 2 out of 3 like their first 5 weekends or something. It was crazy. They weren't getting swept, but they weren't winning series either. And I think that's ultimately what's going to hurt them from a hosting perspective. But yeah, I definitely think the talent is there. And, in addition to Bohannon being fired, they lost Grayson Hitt, I think the weekend or 2 weekends after they came to Arkansas. And he's their best pitcher, a top 70 guy for the baseball draft this year. So I think it's impressive what they've done to be able to keep things together. And We'll see what happens with them this weekend, but they go into this series, they're 13-14, and they're playing Ole Miss. You got to like their chances to win that one. It's in Tuscaloosa. Ole Miss really didn't have anything to play for. They could end up with at least a 500 record, maybe even a winning record in SEC play.
Right. I just know when they came in here that first night, and I want to say they beat us like, I don't know, 12-1.
Yep, 12-1.
Whatever it was on a Friday night. I remember thinking, wow, this team is really good. I mean, they did everything right. They pitched good, they played defense, they hit. They did everything good. We ended up winning the series, but I mean, they were all close games after that. I don't know. I just thought they were a good team. They had a lot of talent, and and then they played the game the right way. And I still the whole Brad Bohannon, mocking the hog call. I kind of felt like the baseball gods frowned on that, and that's why ultimately he got fired. But I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, I thought I didn't like that part, but everyone says that he's a good guy. And whatever, and I don't know what happened on the gambling thing. I don't even care about any of that. But yeah, I thought they were a talented team, and it looks like they're starting to peak at the right time.
A lot of SEC teams were scheduled to play in midweek games this week, and lots of cancellations. I think there were 6 games that were canceled in the SEC this week, and even Vanderbilt was one of them. They were supposed to play Middle Tennessee on Tuesday night. They said it was canceled because of the threat of inclement weather. And I got a lot of reports from Nashville of sunny and clear skies at 6 o'clock when that game was supposed to be played last night. It seems to me like what's happening is it's the threat of your RPI going down is why a lot of these series are getting canceled, or midweek games, I should say. Even Missouri, Indiana State got canceled, Bubba. And I'm not so sure it wasn't Indiana State who tried to save its RPI by canceling Missouri. You've got Indiana State that's kind of maybe in the hosting talk. I mean, their RPI going into the weekend is 12. It would have gone down had they played Missouri. Certainly would have gone down had they lost that game. But then I think Indiana State may be looking out for itself too, from a standpoint of they're in a Missouri Valley Conference that typically is a one-bid league, and I just think maybe they're looking out for themselves that should they go to the conference tournament and not win it, they've got to have themselves in as strong of a position as possible so that if there are lots of other upsets in conference tournaments, that they're still in a good position from an at-large perspective.
Right. Well, you look at Vandy. It doesn't surprise me that Vandy did that. Now, part of it could be with all their injuries.
I've
they're
had
kind
that
of
thought too. Yeah.
They don't have a lot of healthy guys right now, and maybe they're just trying to get healthy. But I don't know. There ought to be a penalty for that, for canceling when it's.
We saw it a lot last year.
funny.
Ole Miss, they may have not made to the NCAA tournament last year without canceling the Arkansas State game.
Yeah, you're
late
right.
in the year. So it's. I don't know. That's kind of, like SEC football, that last weekend or that weekend before Thanksgiving. That's when you see everybody starting to play the cream puffs now. Alabama wants to play somebody so they can be fresh and ready for Auburn. And heck, even Arkansas is doing it now. I think they're going to play who is it, FIU this year, the weekend before they play Missouri. So it seems like this is kind of that trend for baseball. You get to the end of the year, you're going to cancel your midweek game. So it doesn't hurt your RPI, or at least that's the perception that I get.
And DVH is smart though, because he doesn't schedule Tuesday midweek games after
about the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I think that's genius because it gives your kids a chance to get healthy, get the team healthy. Get your midweek work in without, the only downfall to that is you get guys that don't get at bats, some of your players that don't get a lot of ABs. That's the only bad thing about it. But other than that, it gives you a chance to really get healthy and focus for that weekend. And boy, it worked out great this year that we didn't have midweek games, last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think the 2016 team, they were playing midweek games late into the season, and then it was hurting them on the weekends from a pitching perspective. And I don't remember seeing a lot of midweek games late in the year since that 2016. I'm not saying there haven't been, but that really was the last time that I remember seeing that. I remember in 2015, they went to Creighton and actually played at the World Series Stadium, and the week before they played their regular season finale. So it was something that you did see more often, several years back than certainly you've seen the last few years. James Teague has joined his father, Robert Teague, at the Teague Law Firm, which has been around nearly 30 years and was voted best of Northwest Arkansas in 2019 and 2021. James can help you with most family law matters, including divorce, custody, and child support. He can also help with criminal law, including felony and misdemeanor offenses. If you have an estate need, James at Teague Law Firm can fill your need there too. Teague Law Firm is a full-service law firm where you will talk to actual lawyers. They will call you back and give you their direct sell. You call James and the Teague Law Firm at 479-531-2785. That's 479-531-2785, or visit them online at teague-law.com. The Teague Law Firm. If we can't help you, we'll talk baseball.
As a former Razorback pitcher, James Teague spent years closing innings. Now he's closing cases. With almost 3 decades in business, the Teague Law Firm can help with most family law issues and criminal law. Call James and the Teague Law Firm at 479-531-2785 or visit them at teague-law.com.
Want more coverage of your home team? Download the Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app. Check out the Fan Zone and get up-to-the-minute videos, podcasts, and features on football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. Search for Whole Hog Sports on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire at home. And take it with you on the go by downloading it for your mobile device in your app store. The Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app. Get it today.
Arkansas expects to have Jared Wagner back in the lineup this weekend. He had the pins taken out of his thumb about a week and a half ago. There was a little bit of swelling there, did not play against South Carolina. He began to hit off a tee this week, has practiced with the team this week, at least taken some live at-bats against pitchers who needed to get some work early in the week. And the expectation is that he's going to start and play all of the games against Vanderbilt, or I should say all of them, given that everything goes okay with him from a health perspective. But I wonder what you think they're going to do in terms of constructing a lineup now with Jared Wagner back in the fold. I think my expectation is that Ben McLaughlin goes back to being a bench player. You bring him in as a pinch hitter late in a game for somebody, and that Kendall Diggs is a designated hitter again. You got Wagner in left, Borfin moves back to right, and of course you got Josenberger back in center now. But I wonder from like a standpoint, do you go back to Jared Wagner in the 3-hole like they had him beforehand, or maybe do you try to see how he does at the bottom of the order and then move him back up? I just wonder how you think they're going to approach this from the standpoint of constructing a lineup.
I don't know. I think you put him right back where he was. You know, put him 3-4 holes, split those lefties up, and he's going to be a force in the lineup no matter what. And Ben, you know, you feel for Ben McLaughlin, but that's baseball. You know, you can't do anything about it. Ben did a great job. You know, I think he's hitting 333 in the SEC.
In SEC play, even higher than that overall.
Yeah, 452 on base percentage in SEC play. Ben's done a phenomenal job when he's gotten in there and got the chance. I don't know that we'd be where we're at without Ben filling in and doing what he did. He's had some really big at bats for us. But, you know, it's going to make us better because now you got a really good left-handed bat to come off the bench late in the games, kind of a la, Charlie Welch, except it's a left-handed bat, and I think just a pure hitter. I love Ben in that situation because he just puts together really good ABs. So I think that's a good weapon for us off the bench. But I guess in answer to your question, I bet you DVH throws him right back in the middle of that lineup. Don't know what all he's been able to do. I haven't talked to Jared a lot, since the injury, but there's so many ways to stay sharp. I'm sure he's using the VR headsets and, tracking pitches in the bullpen. I'm a big fan of visualizing. You visualize your last game, your last couple of games, visualize every pitch you hit, you got, every swing you took. And you can play those reps over mentally, and it's like you never left the lineup if you do it the right way. So I think he's going to get right back in there. And the thing about Jared's swing, Matt, he doesn't have a lot of moving parts in his swing. So it's not like a guy that's, got a whole lot of moving parts that he has to get reconnected to time up. It's a simple swing. It's a simple stance, simple load, simple. Everything about it's simple. And so the guys like that, he doesn't have a hard time coming back and getting his timing back. So the long-winded answer to that is I bet you DVH puts him right back in the middle of that lineup and lets him go back to doing Jared Wagner things.
It's interesting how the lineup is going to look differently from whenever he last hit on April 11th against Little Rock because Caleb Calley has come on now and Kendall Diggs has really come on, and Peyton Stovall probably not going to be in the lineup again this weekend. And so, it's interesting because at that point, you had Cali batting a little bit further down in the order. Diggs, I think, was batting fifth or sixth in the order. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if you see a lineup where you got Josenberger, maybe Diggs in the 2 hole. Then you go to Wagner. Then, what do you do at cleanup? Do you put Cali there? Do you put Borf in there? It's going to look a lot different than I think it did 6 weeks ago.
I think so. You know what Dave could do? He could move Wagner down to like a 5 hole and keep keep the top part where it is. And I think that what was so at the point before he got hurt there for a while, Wagner was kind of carrying the team, so he wasn't getting a whole lot of pitches to hit. I mean, he didn't have a lot of protection in the lineup. He was the guy doing all the damage, so he was getting pitched to like Barry Bonds. I remember the one game where he was 1 for 1 with a home run and 4 walks,
Yeah.
because I interviewed him after that game, and I think he got 2 pitches to hit. He fouled one off, and the other one he hit 470 feet. So, I mean, just having him, that presence back in the middle of that lineup is going to be awesome. Wherever he ends up in there, whether it's 3, 4, 5 hole, wherever, I think DVH will probably put him somewhere in the middle part. But and even if he went down in the lineup a little bit, he's going to get pitched to the same because he's Jared Wagner.
I can't remember if I mentioned this on this podcast last week or if I was just talking with someone about it, but what's amazing to me is that Wagner, even for all of those weeks that he was out of the lineup, it took until the Mississippi State weekend for Jace Borfin to tie him in team home runs, which I think they're still tied. And it took until the Mississippi State weekend for Kendall Diggs to pass him in RBI. And I think that had he been able to stay healthy, he would have been an All-American this season because I think those were the type of numbers that he was putting up.
Oh, I think without a doubt. I mean, he was on pace to put up some really good numbers, and it's unfortunate that he got hurt. I mean, fortunately though, there's guys that get hurt and are out the whole season. So, the fact that he's able to come back from this, I mean, I think it's a blessing for Jared and for this whole team to have him back healthy again, right here at coming into postseason play.
How long do you think it takes him to get acclimated?
I don't think it'll take him long. Like I said, I know he's been taking fly balls, so his legs are in shape. Doesn't have a lot of moving parts in his swing. I just don't think it's going to take him long to get back in a groove again, as long as the hand is healthy and the strength is there. Now, as a hitter, when you've got something wrong with your hands, it affects you. If he's lost hand strength in that bottom hand, it can affect your swing a little bit. I think it would be worse if it was his top hand. I'm more of a top hand hitter, but with that bottom hand, yeah, if there's strength issues there, that might be a problem. But other than that, I mean, if he's healthy and the strength is there, I don't think it's going to take him long to get going again.
We mentioned this earlier. Vanderbilt probably going to be without, well, they're definitely going to be without at least one starter. They may be without 2 this weekend, and I'm talking about starting pitchers. Carter Holton is out. He's been Vanderbilt's #1 pitcher most of the season, although he's battled some different injuries that's had him in and out of the rotation. He didn't pitch last week against Florida. Hunter Owen, who's been their #2, is questionable. Those are both left-handers. Devin Futrell, who has been in the rotation all season, he's also a left-hander. And I've said this a number of times that I think when they're healthy, Holton and Owen and Futrell make up the best pitching rotation in the SEC. The problem for Vanderbilt is that they haven't been healthy over the back half of the schedule, and that's why you saw Vanderbilt start 13-2 in the SEC, but over the back half they're just what would that be, 4-8? Yeah, over the last 4 weeks they've lost 3 of their last 4 series. Got swept by Tennessee, got swept by Florida, lost a series against Alabama. They did have a series win over Kentucky during that time frame. They've been good at home. They're 11-1 at home this year. Their only home loss was to South Carolina in Game 1. That was actually the first game, I believe, when Holton did not pitch. South Carolina came in, hit him real well, and then Vanderbilt won the final 2 games of the series. If they can't pitch, we don't know what Vanderbilt's going to do. Last week, they threw a couple of right-handers against Florida. Neither of them pitched very well. Patrick Riley is someone we've seen before, Bubba, probably a couple of times, actually. It seems like he's been there a few years. But Riley, I think he got hit around pretty good, maybe gave up 10 hits and 8 runs against Florida. They threw another right-hander named Grayson Carter, who couldn't even get out of the first inning, gave up a couple of hits, walked 3 batters, gave up a few runs. And so, from a pitching perspective, even if Hunter Owen can't go, that he's battling something I feel like Arkansas has a little bit of an upper hand, and I don't know that I would have believed that 3 or 4 weeks ago, saying that they had an upper hand from a pitching perspective against Vanderbilt. But I mean, you look at what Vanderbilt's bullpen has done without Holton and without Owen in the weekends where they haven't been able to pitch, and you kind of look at what they've done in the midweeks. When they're having to use the pitchers who are going to have to fill those innings. It feels like Arkansas's got a chance to go over there and maybe have some success offensively.
Oh, I think so. You take Holton and Owen out of there, that's a whole lot of innings that someone's got to make up for. So, I mean, that's huge for Arkansas to go in. And I didn't look at the splits of the righties that threw last week against Florida, so I don't know how they do lefty versus righty. But yeah, I like our chances going in. I really do. I think it lines up perfect for us.
Vanderbilt is one of the fastest teams in the SEC. We know about Bradfield, but they've got some others who can really move. I think it's RJ Austin is their second baseman. Maybe he's their shortstop. I need to look that up. But I remember seeing a replay this year where he was just flying around the bases, and that's kind of what you come to expect from Vanderbilt. They always seem like they've got two or three of those guys that are just absolute burners. And Bradfield is the one that kind of, what would you say, the straw that stirs the drink, right? I mean, when he's getting on and he's moving around on the bases, that's when their offense is really having a lot of success. How do you limit Enrique Bradfield, or can you on the bases?
Well, the way to limit him is to do what Florida did. They kept him off base.
Easier said than done.
He went 1 for 10 against Florida. And that's the key. They are a different lineup when he's on base. I mean, we know the importance of getting a leadoff guy on, but anytime Enrique Bradfield's on base, he's a threat. Lead off, 1 out, 2 out. It doesn't matter. I mean, he can be on third, in 2 pitches. But and I said early on, after we played TCU at Globe Life, I was really frustrated with the pitch clock. I said, Enrique Bradfield's going to steal 75 bags this year. I said, there's not going to be any way to stop him with the pitch clock. Now that's, pitchers have adjusted and we've figured it out, but I just thought there was going to be no way to stop him. But I really think the key is just try to keep him off base. Easier said than done, but it's funny, you talk about the speed on this team. They play well at home because they recruit players to play on their turf, just like Kentucky does. The same thing. You look at Kentucky's home record versus their away record. I mean, they dominate at home, and on the road, they're not very good. But they're a team that's designed to play on the turf. I saw a stat. I want to say Kentucky has 20. I want to say they have 20 sack bunts, 30 sack bunts, I think is the number. That Kentucky has right now. We're second we have 12 sacrifice bunts. But I mean, they're designed around playing on turf.
Bradfield, he's got the lowest number of stolen bases this year, and he's on pace to have the lowest number of stolen bases this year that he's had in his career. 124 though in his 3-year career there at Vanderbilt, and it's moving up the SEC record book. I'm not exactly sure where he stands, but I know that the SEC record for steals was by Mike Bassey at Tennessee in 89 to 91. And so he's 21 shy of that. He's probably somewhere in that range of like what Chris Burke did. I know that, he had somewhere in 130 range at Tennessee. I think he was second all time in the SEC. I just think Bradfield's an incredible player. There are those players that stand out, Bubba, when you see him in person. We saw Bradfield in person here in Fayetteville last year. We talked the other day about how we saw Vance Honeycutt in person against North Carolina last year. He's just one of those players that really stands out, and you know that he's got a bright future in the game.
Oh, he does. I mean, without doubt. I love the way he plays hard. Plays every doesn't take a pitch off. I love the way he runs the bases. I don't know. There's some guys that you really enjoy watching. Enrique Bradfield's one of those for me.
You talked about playing on turf, and I said earlier that I wanted to talk about this because Kentucky plays on turf too, and you see them play kind of a similar style to Vanderbilt. I think Kentucky's style's even been more small ball than Vanderbilt's has been this year. But when you're not used to playing on turf, how hard is it going in and playing on that type of surface like Arkansas will do this weekend?
Oh, I don't think it's as hard to go from So I spent years in Columbus, Ohio, Yankee AAA team. We had turf when I was there. They
Mhm.
later went to grass after I left. But I think going from turf to grass is harder than going from grass to turf.
Hmm.
I mean, I think the Razorbacks, as far as defensively, I think for them going, plus you got to remember we have the Fowler Center where we can play off turf anytime we
Mhm.
want. We can take extra ground balls, get the reads off the turf anytime we want over there. I don't think it's going to affect us going in there playing on turf. I just think it's you look at the teams that play on turf at home, their winning percentages usually go way down when they go on the road and they play on natural surface,
Hmm.
versus teams coming in and playing on the turf. That's just my opinion. It's not scientific. It's just from experience and just watching teams play. So I don't think it's going to really be an effect for us.
I
But
mean,
you look at Kentucky. They struggle on the road.
mhm.
They struggle. Not Vandy's not as good on the road, but Kentucky, there's a real big difference in the way they play on the road versus at home.
Well, I mean, here's the records. Vanderbilt 23-5 at home this year. They're 8-9 away from home. Kentucky 24-4 at home this year. They're 11-11 away.
Oh, well, there you go.
But I mean, it speaks to what you were saying. It's
Yeah.
it's a pretty striking contrast between that home record and road record. And I think it's probably that way with a lot of teams. But I mean, heck, even Arkansas, their home record is 30-4 after last weekend. I think they're right around 500, maybe a game over 500 in road games this year. But that is kind of striking.
Yeah.
What I'd be
Yeah, it
interested to
is.
see, and I don't have the breakdown, is what are their running numbers like, road versus home? Because I feel like at home it feels like those teams kind of build teams for their home field, if that makes any sense.
Right. As far as like stealing
Hmm.
bases
Hmm.
and I would like to know their splits and see how many runs they score on the road, how many stolen bases they have on the road versus at home. I'll tell you when there were several teams that do it. You see it a lot in the minor leagues. If you're playing a team that's designed around speed, when they come in, the grass, the dirt infield seems to get watered a little bit extra around the bases. So it's especially around the first base area, it tends to be overwatered and just a little bit softer to kind of slow that running game down. So I doubt that there's any of that going on at Baum Walker, but I'm just saying it's something it's a practice that's very well used in in minor leagues and yeah, actually in some big league ballparks as well.
They've mentioned that Arkansas home field advantage. They're 882 winning. Bob Holt wrote something on this today at wholehogsports.com. But the 882 winning percentage this year is the second best winning percentage all time at Baum. And they've actually got a chance to pass the 2018 team that was 34-4 and had an 895 winning percentage. So this has just been an incredible year for home games. When South Carolina beat them the other day, it broke a fairly decent winning streak at home. I know that Little Rock had beaten them, and then from an SEC perspective, they hadn't lost since that first game against Alabama. But there was a quote in that series or in that story that Bob wrote that I thought was really good, and it came from the South Carolina series, Bubba. It was Jack Mahoney, who threw a great game last Saturday night for South Carolina. He said, quote, Arkansas is the one place in the SEC that I've always wanted to pitch, and this place did not let me down.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And that's a good recruiting tool right there for Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, give Mahoney credit. That guy came in and pitched a great game against us. And, it was frustrating. I think we were 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position, but I don't know if that was just us not executing or Mahoney just coming in and pitching a great game and executing pitches. But yeah, I read that. I read that quote and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, he went on to say, he said in the seventh inning, I kind of had to remind myself that I had a job to do. That's when Arkansas put those runners on base against him and really had their best scoring chance. And he said, I'm looking around and it was one of, and he said, no, it was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. This place is different here. So, uh, really complimentary words that I don't know that you hear a lot of times from opposing players about a home crowd. They might think it, but they don't always verbalize it. And Arkansas has been so good at home. And I think that's why you like, as we kind of put a bow on this, I think that's why you like their chances, regardless of if they're able to win the conference this weekend or whatever happens in Hoover next week. You kind of love their chances to get to Omaha this year because, I mean, as things stand right now, I think it would take something really unpredictable for them not to be a top 8 seed. I think they've got one sewed up. We'll see if that's the case, but I think if the tournament started right now, Arkansas might be the 2, maybe the 3 overall seed behind Wake Forest, maybe LSU, depending on how the selection committee looked at that. LSU's got the head-to-head over Arkansas, but they're not going to have to leave Baum most likely during the postseason, and that's been a real good recipe for success most years.
Well, I love our fans. I say it all the time. Best fans in college baseball. They know when to cheer. They just understand the game of baseball. Now, they don't always agree with the home plate umpire strike zone, especially the people way down the right field line. I don't know how they can see the strike zone that well from way down there. But anyway, but they've been right a lot this year because there's been some crazy strike zones. But yeah, I mean, I think these guys feed off of this crowd. I don't know that last year's team really did. I think this year's team really feeds off of this crowd. When the crowd gets going, we seem to get going, whether it be on the mound, dialing up big pitches, or, at the plate or on defense. I don't know. It's just something about being here at home. I talk about the Baum Walker magic. You look at the Brady Slavin's ball that he hit 60 miles an hour down the first baseline that hits the bag, bounces over Moss's head and rolls down in the right field corner. Stuff like that only happens at Baum Walker. We never get those breaks on the road, it seems like. But when we're here, those things always seem to go our way. It's kind of that Baum Walker magic that you love. So anyway, yeah, looks good for us. If we just take care of business and end up back here at home, I like our chances.
What's your prediction for this weekend?
I think we're going to win the series, Matt. I think we're going there and take 2 out of 3. I really do. I believe in this team wholeheartedly. I think they love playing baseball. A stat, we've got all these analytics and everything, but some guys just love playing the game of baseball. And that's a stat it's not a stat. It's something that gets overlooked in the analytics, but I think this team loves playing baseball. They love playing together, and you get a group of guys like that, and I'm telling you, they're dangerous. They're really dangerous. And so I think we're going to go in there and take 2 out of 3 from them, and then go down to Hoover and go on from there.
Arkansas and Vanderbilt this weekend. The SEC's got a little bit of a flex schedule at the end of the year. So none of these games were originally supposed to be on network television, but now Thursday and Friday, both games are going to be on SEC Network. On Thursday, first pitch at 6 o'clock. On Friday, a first pitch at 7 o'clock. We'll be burning the midnight oil there at Hawkins Field. And then on Saturday, they've got a first pitch scheduled for 2 o'clock. A little bit of rain is in the forecast in Nashville. I mean, it's no different than here this time of year. You're going to be dodging rainstorms throughout the day. But it looks like it's going to be okay to get the games in on time. But certainly that'll be something to just monitor. Maybe it'll be clear and sunny at 6 o'clock, just like it was last night in Nashville. But we'll see. And then I'm looking forward to being over there in Nashville. I'll be there. Hope you'll home to wholehogsports.com throughout the weekend to read the coverage from Arkansas and Vanderbilt. And who knows, maybe we'll have a conference championship to report on. We'll be back with another podcast next week to talk about the Vanderbilt series, also talk about the Razorbacks games that are coming up at the SEC tournament. One thing is that they have clinched a top 4 seed at the SEC tournament. I think they're still the only team that has clinched a top 4 seed. Even Florida could fall down to the 5th seed. And so by getting one of those top 4 seeds, you're guaranteed to play twice at the SEC tournament, and you're guaranteed not to have to play that Tuesday single elimination round. So Arkansas will start in Hoover next Wednesday at some point, and the start time will be determined on whatever their seed is. And we'll have more information about that this weekend after the Vanderbilt series. For Bubba Carpenter, I'm Matt Jones. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next week on the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast.
The proceeding has been a production of wholehogsports.com. Look for our latest podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast store. And visit us anytime at wholehogsports.com for the latest news and commentary.